Hi, my name is Tayla, and this is Ssico podcast.
Tayla, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I'm actually very excited to have you on because I know how involved you are in the campus community and you have like really, a strong sense of urgency when it comes to fighting for the Black Lives Matter movement and, just against injustice in general. And we were just talking about off cam how you're taking a break because you're tired. And that's funny because my first question to you was going to be, I think that you're known as sort of the person that acts like a leader in terms of the protest movement in Syracuse, and just in general, you're outspoken and you're not scared to be. And I was just wondering, having that expectancy from people, does it ever get like tiring sometimes where you need a break?
Um, well, first, hi. Thanks again for having me. I'm really
Hmm.
excited to have this discussion with you.
Yeah.
I would say that, like, to answer your question, um, I don't necessarily see a lot of pressure, I guess, in terms of people me to do things. I think no one can force me to do anything. So I kind of just do it because it's something I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
I think the pressure of doing it right, though, I think that there's a different pressure in terms of like executing whatever you need to execute well
Mm.
and get your point across in a way that's like digestible for people. And I think like that's something I've struggled with recently, especially as my politics have changed. The way I approach things have also changed.
Hmm.
I don't think it's ever been an issue of do I feel pressure to speak out, or like am I frustrated that people tap on me to do things or whatever. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's like someone has to do something.
Yeah.
So I don't really mind like, taking lead roles in different situations. And I would also say I feel comfortable because there's always other people as well taking lead roles. So it's not just me, but it's other students on campus, and also other people when I'm organizing outside of campus. Like there's other people to depend on too. In terms of fatigue, it gets very exhausting. But I've realized that I'm really good at longevity and like going at things for a very long time.
Yeah.
I think I experienced my limit this semester with the occupation that happened in February and March. That ended up being 32 days long, most exhausting month of my life,
Mm.
to be honest. So I mean, I know what my limits are now. I know I can sleep in a building on the floor
Yeah.
and shower for 4 days and do a bunch of weird stuff in the name of justice. I mean, like now I know like how far I'm willing to go and how far I might not be willing to go
Mm.
in terms of just advocating for certain things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because when I was in Syracuse, there
Mm-hmm.
were some protests, especially with the whole Theta Tau incident,
Mm-hmm.
that really sparked a lot of, the rising in the minority community. But it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until after 2019 graduated that I feel like shit really got heated up, and I just
Mm-hmm.
remember thinking, where did this come from? Like where did this start? Because it was always bad, but it was something that was talked about, and I don't think it was something that was like over the top, or at least from my
Mm-hmm.
perspective. But after I graduated, I remember seeing like cases of police brutality
Mm-hmm.
with some SU students and the local police enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
and the school just wasn't doing or giving enough of an effort to protect the
Mm-hmm.
minority community. And
Yeah.
the whole not SU movement with like the protests in Heinz Hall and the back and forth, it just seemed so crazy to me, and I was upset because I didn't understand or I didn't know the whole story because I just
Mm-hmm.
knew what I was seeing online.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could just like talk about that just a little bit in terms of just why the movement was so big and what the fight was, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you bring up Theta Tau because I think that is when it began. I mean, like I think like that was kind of the last straw for the Black community
Hmm.
for the but we were trying it out in a different way of how to address these issues because I think it was kind of the first time that it became exacerbated to that level. Obviously, we always knew that like racism on campus was a problem, and like we dealt with stuff in our departments that always felt very micro and individual.
Yeah.
But then we realized, like with Theta Tau, like, oh, not only are the Black people on this campus dealing with it, but everybody else with any ism attached to them is also feeling it, right? Yeah. So I mean, I think it began there for all of us to recognize, like, oh, okay, this isn't just an individual problem, or it's not just a community specific issue. It's like a what greater problem of the university's inability to address like problems of racism and injustice and things like that. And I think that we were trying to figure out, because I remember like that was my sophomore year of college was when Theta Tau happened. So that's the first time I ever actually got involved in campus protests, was that situation. And I just remember like our approach to addressing these issues were just very, very, very different than what they became with NotagainSU. And I think a lot of us had a lot of trust in the system in terms of them being able to handle it, because they really made it seem like they were listening. We had so many forums. I'm sure you remember like 1,000 bazillion forums. Engineering school had a forum. Your individual college had a forum. Your floor and your like freaking like your dormitory had a forum to talk about these issues. So it's like the conversation was being had, but it just felt like nothing was tangibly being done. So it's like now, okay, consciousness on campus has been raised because of Theta Tau. So then we get on to Ackerman, which is what you're mentioning in terms of the physical assault by a woman that was a part of a white woman that lives in the community who assaulted 2 Black men at a party with a gun.
Yes.
And it not being taken seriously by SPD, them telling those students not to seek medical treatment, although one of them ended up getting a concussion and then sought medical treatment on their own. And then the school lacking to call it a hate crime. All DPS very much was well within their rights to call it a hate crime. So then that was very specific to the Black community on campus. And of course, we all know that like the Department of Public Safety and the Black community do not get along at all. So I think like that also exacerbated more tension between specifically the Black community and DPS. So I think that with Ackerman also, I think there was a level of trust of, okay, you know what, fine, like we're gonna let the school deal with it and hopefully things change. We brought up the issue of, you know, this and brought it to the forefront. We got a little bit of media, whatever. Let's hope they actually do something. And then it just became a symptom of, okay, the school's really good at this whole PR thing of like convincing people that they're going to actually change and implement new processes in order to confront these systemic issues. But as time goes on, we realize like that's not what's happening. So then with NotagainSU, I think like that's when campus realized like, all right, y'all aren't gonna do anything. So we're gonna have to turn it up just a little bit for y'all to really understand like the students are not playing with y'all. Y'all really need to like take this seriously. I know like the first protest we had was it happened in November of 2019. So it was an 8-day sit-in in the Barn Center, which is like this new fitness facility that they like poured like $50 million into. It was like the newest building on campus had just opened, so we knew it would piss them off. Like if we and like did this protest there. And I think what's special about NotagainSU is that like the core difference between what Recognize Us was with Theta Tau and NotagainSU is that it's very specific to the Black community and the way in which organizing on campus shifted. Whereas we all know what specific issues deal with our community, and other people also know what issues deal with their communities. So we all came together and curated separate lists of demands that were specific to us, as well as things that connected all of us too. So we made sure that like every little thing would get addressed. So like the Indigenous students came up with their own demands, the Black students came up with their own demands, Jewish students came up with their own demands, and like international students came up with their own demands too. And we all presented them to the university. And I think that the school was forced to listen. I think it was a wake-up call for them, because I don't think they've ever had thousands of students sleeping in a building to like protest their nonsense. And I think it's the first time that like there was mass solidarity on campus like that. I think like Theta Tau is like an example of that, but I think that like Syracuse is very reactive in terms of its activism. So it always has to be when something is happening that people come together. But I also think that it got crazy, like you were saying, because whilst in that building and during the sit-in, between the first day of the sit-in to about the end of the semester, there was like 17 hate crimes that happened consecutively. And that included graffiti being sprayed, like calling people the N-word, people drawing swastikas like on the walls or like in the snow or whatever. There was a woman that was verbally assaulted outside and right in front of the DPS building. That happened as well. It's like happened right in front of DPS. They didn't do anything about it. So there was that. There was a white supremacist shooter manifesto, specifically the Christchurch shooter one, which was the mass shooting that happened in New Zealand. So like there's Islamophobic ties to that manifesto being dropped to students in a library, as well as being posted online in a Syracuse University specific like Greek forum or whatever. So there was a lot of stuff like that happened within like not even really 3 weeks of the beginning of the protest and the end of the protest. So it was clear that like the student body, some people, were not feeling people and people coming together and resisting against, a lot of these issues that are happening on campus. And I think also the school tried to really get away with blaming it on fraternities, just like they did with Theta Tau. But I think like another special part about NotagainSU is that like, we're like, no, it's y'all. Like, all know, like, I think everyone knows, especially being a Black person specifically, knows that there's individuals that are going to be doing stupid stuff. But it's like, it's kind of the accountability process that those people are going to go through. And if the university doesn't hold them accountable, then yes, it is your problem. And yes, it is you exacerbating those issues because you're not holding anybody accountable, whether that's because their parents are donors, whether that's because you just don't really care, like who knows, but you're not holding anybody accountable, which makes you complicit in the racism that's happening. But things really took a turn in the spring.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was bad. So we started a protest. This was my senior year, so I graduated this year, but we organized a protest. It was supposed to be a sit-in again, but we decided to occupy the administration building. And the specific protest wasn't in reaction to any like bias incident or whatever, because students are past this point of us being upset about hate crimes or whatever happening on campus. It's really like systemic changes on campus. So us wanting them to follow through with the demands that they already committed to. So like a good example of one of the things that weren't being followed is that Syracuse DPS has to update their website every 48 hours when a bias-related incident happens, which is like what they coin as hate crimes, just it's like a PC word for hate crime, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it sounds a little bit less bad. Yeah. Bias-related, They're supposed to update their website every 48 hours. Obviously, that ended up not happening. Whereas we were finding stuff out from other students of people like reporting these incidents. They were reporting them on their crime log, but not putting them online for people to be able to like see them. One of the things that got brushed on the rug was that there was a queer student that was punched in the face on Marshall Street, and like that never got posted online, never got reported. It was on the crime log. And it was also like this big debate between what warrants an email and what doesn't warrant an email. Because if you recall, if we got an email from DPS, it's usually like when it's an armed attack, like a robbery, whatever. Yeah. And it's like, I think someone being physically assaulted on Marshall Street warrants a campus-wide email, because any other time that would have happened, you would have gotten a campus-wide email, right? So it's getting robbed on Marshall Street or like being physically assaulted. But because it was bias related, they didn't, email the entire student body, which is more of a reason for them to, inform. But I feel like it's this cover up of, oh yeah, like this doesn't really happen here, or we don't want to bring light to like these types of issues happening on campus, when like people should know what's happening for their own safety on campus, right? So like that was just one of the bazillion things they didn't actually follow through with doing that were time sensitive. We all know that like with certain demands, it's going to take a while, much longer than just a semester or the end of the semester to implement. That's just something you can, quickly implement. So it was a reaction to that as opposed to an actual hate crime, which the school was not expecting, right? So like I don't know how we managed to take over the administration building without them realizing, but I was very surprised. It's like once we all got in there, they're like, oh my God, like the kids are occupying. And I guess because there was no incident to like, spark an occupation. So the first day, it was really just them asking us, like, leaving, instead of being like, oh, like, why are y'all here? Like, what is it that you're asking for? And it's like us trying to engage with them, like different administrators and senior administration and like staff that came to talk to us, and us and trying to engage with them, like, hey, the reason we're here is because, you guys haven't followed through with the things you signed off on last semester that are time sensitive, and we want another meeting with the administration in order to like put timelines on these things that we know we can hold you accountable to timelines. And just the reaction was, okay, that's great. When are you leaving? The building closes at 9:00. Just so you could be suspended if you stay in this building past 9:00.
Okay, so let's just take a pause for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a buildup with all these things, starting with Theta Tau, when we left it to the administration and realized they're good at listening, they're good at promising things, but they're not good at taking action and actually protecting. Then you have the hate crime incident with the white woman and a group of her friends. I remember that story, and it was just so crazy and random at the time, just hearing it. But she assaulted students of color with a gun. I think she hit them in the head with it. The students got a concussion, and the crime was reported, but the Syracuse administration was trying to cover it up, and they weren't acting towards it. They weren't actively trying to close a case, persecute the people who did it. Rather, they're just trying to make it seem like, oh, it's just whatever. Don't even go to the hospital. You're fine. And the minority community hears that, and you begin protesting. All the communities come up with their own list of demands, and it picks up, but the organization is still not listening, and the frustration is still building, and all leads up to occupying the administration building, where you decide to sit in and sleep over, and we're just gonna stay here until we're heard. And that's when really a lot of the pushback began between students and DPS and administration and things like that. And watching this whole thing from the outside looking in, I was just seeing people trying to force their way in the administration building, DPS pushing some people, the chancellor's office making up some rules like you can't feed them or give them clothes or anything, just in a way of just trying to force you guys to leave, which is inhumane, actually. So just being there online, like, were you surprised at all that they're going to these lengths just to assert their authority?
Absolutely, because then we would have brought food. I was very surprised. Yeah. It was so bad. I was just like, I expected to be suspended. That's not something I wasn't prepared to not, like, I was prepared to be suspended. I was not prepared to be internally suspended, because interim suspensions are normally left for people that are involved in like sexual assault cases or fights or like violent acts, right? So like interim suspension is like when you're immediately suspended, and if you come to campus, you risk arrest. So we all were internally suspended. So I wasn't allowed to go to class anymore.
All the protesters.
Yeah, all the protesters were internally suspended inside. So 30 plus people got interim suspension. And so we weren't allowed to go to class. We risked arrest if we were on school property. And I lost my job, because if you have a work-study job, it's connected to campus. And when you get suspended like that, they have to take you off the schedule. So I ended up losing my job as well. And 5 students that weren't even involved with the protests, because they racially profiled students because they never asked for identification ever. So they racially profiled 5 students of color, and they also got internally suspended, although they had absolutely nothing to do with the protest. So they ended up losing jobs as well and opportunities, and also weren't allowed to go to class while they were trying to like fix their own situations with the administration, because they had to fight false accusations. Yeah.
So since they never asked for identification, how did they like know who was who and things like that? Just word of mouth?
That's the crazy part. So of course, like the school knows the core organizers at this point because they see us all the time. But of course they had to use what they told us was GPS cameras, of course, and also the cameras that were inside of Cross Hines in the areas that we were in, and they had to guess who we were. Wow. They refused to say that like they have any facial recognition technology and that they were able to, but which is makes absolutely no sense because they were able to suspend all these people within 2 hours. I don't know how you can suspend
2 hours?
30 people. Yes. I don't know how you can suspend and verify the identities of about 30 plus people in about 2 hours without any facial recognition. We kept trying to press them about that. Like, you guys went by hand and checked all 15,000 plus identities of the students, undergraduate students that go there, and you figured it out? Or do you have some sort of database, or like, what's up? So they wouldn't really tell us like how they identified us. They just said, you know, some of you guys. And it's like, you don't know all of us. So like, because there were people that weren't organizers, like obviously just people that support the movement, you know, so like that were there. So it was just very confusing. And also it's like, there's facial recognition technology also tends to be very inaccurate when it comes to people of dark pigments too. So it would make sense that like all the people that got racially profiled were Black or had a dark pigment, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, so what's going on here? But they wouldn't admit to.
How did they tell you that, hey, listen up guys, you're all suspended?
They dropped off so crazy. They dropped off, like they sent a DPS letter officer to drop off 30 letters just in the middle of the atrium where the building is. And so we only opened one up and read it out loud, and we realized like it was for all of us. And then that's when we made the decision, like as a collective of people inside, if we were going to leave or if we were going to stay. And we obviously made the ultimate decision to stay, especially because it said, I think the reason it became about personal and movement work at that point, because it's like a lot of us had things that we could risk that we couldn't risk really. But for us, it was like, you know, you have a bunch of Black kids in a building, and the letter says we risk arrest if we're on school property, and then you have the building surrounded by DPS officers who knew if they were going to arrest us or like have SPD outside to arrest us among us walking out, right? So like that was also part of the strategy of staying inside, was because there are people outside making sure that SPD officers wouldn't come inside to arrest us. So that's also part of the reason why we ended up staying inside, was because we didn't want to get arrested. And then as the night went on, a lot of us got personalized emails from the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities with our names, our like SU IDs, all that, saying that we were internally suspended, that we're not allowed to go to class, this and that. And then the school went on to violate our FERPA rights and contacted our parents about our suspensions. So a lot of people whose parents even know they were protesting, and a lot of people's parents who would not be okay with them protesting also got notified. So it was another way for the school to like put pressure on us to leave by having our parents freak out and like call us and be like, oh my goodness, like they'll lift your suspension if you just leave the building and blah, blah, blah. I remember my mom like calling me upset. She was like, you're a senior, you have to leave. I was just like, well, like, I was like, if I leave, I still have to fight the suspension. So I'd rather stay and like fight the suspension from in here. So, yeah.
So that's crazy. So you guys are in the building still. You decide not to leave, even though you all got suspended, and they're still trying to fuck with you by calling your parents. And yeah, so what was, you know, the end result? What was your picture of the end result? Was it sort of just like a stalemate? We're just gonna stay here until they stop trying to fuck with us and actually listen? Or was it more, fuck, we're all suspended anyways, let's just see this through?
I think it was both. I think it was like, well, I mean, like, we were like, I think for us, it wasn't the suspension that was the problem. The biggest issue was not being able to eat or be able to shower or anything like that, because no one came into the situation expecting that to like be a part of the problem. We expected to be suspended or whatever as a possibility risk, but nobody expects their university that they pay for to like be like, oh yeah, don't give the students any food. Like, that just wasn't something we ever thought would happen or like clued into. but it was just kind of like, we really cannot believe like they're doing this. And it was just like, well, it kind of became a strategy thing, because it's like, all right, let's see how far they're gonna go like with us, because they're gonna look crazy. Like if they really keep trying to go harder, we're proving our point. Like I think like with this occupation, like we prove the point that the school is willing to go at great lengths to cover up their issues with racism and like white supremacy, to be honest, right? And so like it escalated to a point of, you have DPS officers assaulting students. You have DPS officer throwing away food that's being passed into the building of students. You have graduate students climbing windows to sneak food in through the window and like snacks and stuff, right? You have Black faculty people from the Office of Multicultural Affairs being denied access into the building, although like other non-Black faculty that are part of the same office were allowed into the building because they had key card access. You just have a lot of nonsense happening and a lot of bias and racism being exposed at once in the way in which the school was reacting to the protests. And it was quite clear that like, I can't confidently say like any other group of students were protesting like this, they would have reacted the same way. And it was just crazy. It got to the point where it's like, we're negotiating food with administration. Like I remember I called a staff member that I'm close to and was like, yo, like they actually said like, they're not letting anyone bring us in food. They're not gonna bring us food. Can you figure out a way to get us some food or whatever? And like, she ended up getting us some wraps and stuff. And she was like, I'm on my way to the building, because she kept trying to negotiate her way inside of the building because they weren't allowing her to come in. Mind you, these are staff members that work at the university, right, whose jobs are to work with Black students. So like, let's just keep that a buck. They're not letting in these people that they pay to work with our population inside of the building. Yeah. So like, it's making that clear. But like, so the food got there before she did, but DPS had the food and they walked by us with it. And I asked them, and I was like, oh, that looks like the food that the staff member, I'm not gonna say your name, but like the staff member ordered for us. And he was like, oh yeah, it is. Like if you come in this room and talk to us, you can have it. And I was just like, so then we were all like, whoa, like,
trying to set you up.
Seriously? We're here, like that's like an actual like Geneva Code like violation. You cannot use food as like a bargaining or negotiation tactic. Like that's like not, I was in shock, to be honest. I was just like, are you serious? So like after that, anytime the administration brought any food inside of the building or tried to like give us any food, we didn't take it, because it was just like, nah, like y'all started making, food contingent on speaking to you guys. And every single time they brought in food, it always was paired with something else. Like the next time they brought in food, they also tried to get us like these contracts to sign saying that we weren't, that we would commit to not protesting again, and they would lift our suspensions. Right. And it's like, that's and they brought in little meals after we hadn't eaten all day, and they were like, "Oh, here's some food so you can eat it while you think over this contract." Blah blah blah. We're like, do you seriously think like we're dumb? Like that's the thing. Like I feel like the school thought we were idiots and that we didn't know how to read, because it's like we read the contract, we asked for a lawyer, they denied us rights to a lawyer the first day. And so it was just like, all of this was happening, and so many fucked up things happened just at one time that I can't even, like, to be honest, I wouldn't be able to recall everything that like went on. Like we wrote about it, so like we have a log of everything that happened because we had to document it. But it was just like, it was just so many insane things happening, and it was just upsetting to see how far the school was willing to go to like not change. Because it's not like we weren't asking for, that's the thing. If y'all read through the demands, which I encourage you to, if you go to NotagainSU's
like, put a link in the description,
Instagram and stuff. If you read the demands, it's not like remove, like defund the university, like end Syracuse, burn it. Like, no, it's literally like, hey, let's put $5 million into HGLP because we have the money to do it. Let's put $5 million to our Hibis Com, right? Like these scholarships that benefit minority students. It's let's add another multicultural learning community floor into each dorm so that people of color will feel safe in their dorms. A lot of these incidents are happening like in dorms. Like, let's ask for the standard operating procedures of DPS so we know their use of force policies. These are simple things that aren't groundbreaking. There's no abolition of DPS. There's no abolition of like the administration. Let students lead themselves. Blah blah. Like, no, it's like simple ask, and it's like y'all are willing to go that far for that. Like, it shows like how anti-Black the university is.
Yeah,
That's how I.
the fucked up thing about racism, there's just so many things that are terrifying and horrible about it. But one of the biggest things that I think is like evident in 2020 and just in general is just like the pride that's involved in it with the people that either deny it or just are with it. Like anytime there's a rise in the Black Lives Matter movement, there's also a rise in the white supremacy or the All Lives Matter or just whatever negation of the Black Lives Matter would be. Like for example, with NASCAR, the institution itself, they're starting to be more progressive. They banned Confederate flags, and the negation of that is the demand for Confederate flags are higher than ever, and stores are selling out on Confederate flags, and so people they feel like it's a fight directly against them. So with Syracuse, where it's an institution that isn't progressive, which is ridiculous at this point, because institutions that even I talked to a SU 2020 student who doesn't believe in systematic racism, and he said he doesn't believe it because there are no systematic laws or there's no that like things we've learned, like the common misconception when it comes to the systematic argument. But these institutions, like even if there are like no laws that say, oh, there's no segregation laws that exist anymore. Even like in cases where there are institutions like Syracuse University, where it's a private institution that has minority groups protesting in the building, but what they're doing is systematic racism. When you mention the faculty members that aren't even involved in the protest, but just happen to be Black, aren't allowed into a building where they work in just because they're Black and people of color communities protesting in there, that's a form of segregation. Like, wait a minute, Black person, I'm gonna stop you right there. I'm gonna let this white person in though, because you might have a connection.
Yeah, it's like I'll make your friend believe. I can't convince anybody that systemic racism isn't real or is real or whatever.
Right.
But I feel like this anecdote like kind of pins the needle, really like gets it, is that so the school committed to having an independent review board to determine is Syracuse racist? It is, but they need to have their whole official team script up like recommendations, what the issues are, whatever. The independent review panel was present on the day that we were locked inside of the building by the admin. They requested to meet us and to go inside to talk to us, but they were denied access to us. And they also were very much aware of us being denied food, water, whatever. And on them as an independent board, apparently, like, were trying their hardest to get us food inside of a school that they're doing an independent review on, that the school hired them to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's like there's systemic barriers to like the same institution that's hiring these people to solve these issues are also the same ones that are blocking them and barring them from actually seeing the legitimate issues that exist. So it's like we're having all these they do these things where it's like, let's hire and invest all this random money, right, for people to draft up recommendations, for people to do this and that. But first of all, I don't believe in any of that. I don't believe in independent review boards, and I don't believe in Loretta Lynch coming to our school and like telling us what's wrong with DPS, because it's like the students have already told you what's wrong with DPS. The students have already told you what's wrong with the school. And the students have already drafted up more than, at least, I would say collectively, just as students, hundreds of pages of solutions. Hundreds since 2014.
Right.
Hundreds, if not thousands of solutions, policies, literal actual policies and policy language bullet points, like action plans, curriculums, all that. So like we've already done the work. The labor's been done for free. I'm gonna ask for free. And you're investing all this money for people to bring in these Band-Aid solutions. But it's even crazier that the same people you're paying to do the review, you're refusing to let them talk to the students that are being impacted. The reason you brought them there is because of us. So why aren't you letting them talk to us, right?
Yeah.
And it was so crazy. Like when we met them, we had no idea that they were trying to get in contact with us because the school never gave us the message, right? So then when we met with them, they were like, "Oh yeah, like did y'all get the food? Like trying to get into you guys. Like did y'all get the message that we wanted to meet with you all?" And we're like, because we requested a meeting with them, not knowing that they already wanted to meet with us. So it was just like, this is systemic barriers to even the school putting all their own barriers against themselves, against their own money. It makes absolutely no sense. And it's all in the name of covering it up, not wanting to actually engage and actually fix the problem, because it's like, the thing is this, like, they are fighting against themselves, because there's a reason why some white people get really upset when, we're calling out racism and they're calling us un-American, because to be American is to be white supremacists. To be American is to uphold these systems of oppression, because that's foundationally what our country is. So yes, it does seem very un-American when we're tearing down these slave masters off the podiums of their statues, when we're like pushing these policies through, when we're advocating for abolition of these systems. It is very un-American. You're absolutely right. It is not American to be against white supremacy. That's not American. That's very anti-American, and that's why they feel attacked, because we are actually disrupting their way of life. And it shouldn't come as a surprise. I think a lot of us get like frustrated and like, I can't believe people could be so ignorant, and oh, it's the most American thing to protest. It's like, is it? It might be the most American thing for white folks to protest, but not for us. Like, remember, Boston Tea Party is commemorated, not Nat Turner. There's a difference. Like, they don't commemorate our protests and our resistance and our battles, but white resistance to other white institutions of power, of course. Yeah, American Revolution. Oh my goodness, we love it. But like when we talk about a revolution, oh my God, like that's crazy.
It's just a difference between, just in terms of all facets. When it comes to racism, when it comes to misogyny, in all facets, it's the person in power, the people in power. Any progression is giving up some of that power. I think that's like every white racist Southerners fear, is tearing down this Confederate flag is a step further into me yielding the power that I've always had as an American and as a person that's been in power all my life. And the same thing for men. I was, speaking on just this topic. I was speaking to my friend, and she's a Black woman. She's from Michigan. And she was, educating me in terms of how, when it comes to police brutality and just racism in general, Black women and Black trans women in particular are, some of the most abused. And, Black women suffer at much greater lengths, and it's not as publicized throughout social media, and it's not like a trending topic. Just as unarmed Black men have been killed while unarmed or just beat up and brutalized. The same thing happens to Black women, almost at the same rate, but it's not headline news. So as a Black woman yourself, I just would love to gain some insight, gain some knowledge on what people can do just to gain more awareness when it comes to that topic, and let's just start there.
I think that like we just need to really accept all of our involvement in patriarchy, and like patriarchy is not limited to men. Like women also like participate in patriarchy that like centers men, centers power with men, and like centers them in pretty much everything, right? And I think that like we fall into the trap of doing that, which is why when we're talking about Black trans women, like cisgendered Black women, are also like, you know, perpetuators of violence against Black trans women as well, because we're all advocating and censoring, you know, this system of patriarchy. And we have to recognize that like we're conditioned in the system. So even if it does impact me, right, as a Black woman, doesn't mean I can't perpetuate that against a Black trans woman, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that like understanding the intersections of what patriarchy is and how it like has a very unique spot and space in the Black community specifically is necessary. I think that like we're at a point where it's like there's a lot of stress right now, right, with this conversation, given like the whole No Name J. Cole situation and like you know, Toyin being murdered this week and like last week, and like a lot of discourse coming around like protecting Black women and Black femmes. And like I just really think that we really need to start with like how patriarchy is a white supremacist institution, how like that was just not, patriarchy was not as ingrained and like, you know, and entrenched in like African communities prior to colonialism. Like it just wasn't as pervasive. It wasn't as like, it wasn't institutionalized, right? So I think that like, and that's why the Black community is set up different, why there's way more matriarchs than there are in, you know, white communities. That's not just because, you know, oh, like the Black man's absent, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, it's because like naturally Black women lead in our communities. And like, that's been a tradition prior to colonialism. So, like, that's why that exists. And also not being afraid of Black women leading, right? I just really feel like it's a difficult conversation to have, and it's a very frustrating conversation to have, because it's like, even for me, it's like, you know, I had to unlearn a lot of stuff too, because it's like I feel like I was perpetuating patriarchy for a very long time. Like I was like very much race first, never really thought about my gender, always was like, oh, feminism isn't for me, blah blah blah. But then I realized it's because it was like white feminism like did not include me, so I was just like, feminism doesn't make sense. But now that like I'm well versed, I'm like, okay, that's not feminism. Like this is what feminism is, right? So I mean, like, it takes a lot of work, and it's like I'm only 22 and I have a lot of unlearning and like work to do in terms of like my own deconstruction of patriarchy, me like perpetuating transphobic, you know, ideas, me understanding that like what my space is and like how I can be an ally to like the trans community as well. And I think the problem is that people aren't willing to like let go of the fact that they can also perpetuate oppression. Like we all are capable of doing that. And that's the problem. Black folks like get really tense because it's like we've dealt with this like foot, you know, of white supremacy on us for so long, right? That it sounds crazy to be like we could be perpetuating any type of oppression or that's like hatred or whatever towards another group of people in our own communities. But it's like, but we can, and like that's why understanding intersectionality is so important and crucial in our understanding of how we need to eliminate all systems of oppression in all of their forms in order for all of us to be liberated, instead of just focusing on, you know, one group of people. Because it's like, okay, we free all the Black men, then what? Like, what about us? Like, what about me as a Black woman? What about the trans femmes, right? Black trans femmes. What are they supposed to do? Like, if I'm like free, am I just gonna be like, oh yeah, fuck y'all? Like, I'm not like I'm free, cool. Like, no, like we won't be free until we're all free, right? So it's like understanding our place in perpetuating nonsense, and you know, stop doing it. Like learning to be anti that, because it's not enough to just not be transphobic. Right? You need to be like pro trans folks, pro them living their lives, and pro them living fulfilling lives, and like making sure that you can guarantee that in your own life. Because like if their life depends on your life, depends on it, their life depends on it too, right? So I mean, like I think people just need to get to a point of fighting for each other's humanity in all of its shapes and forms, and like not doing nonsense, you know, make shit bad. I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about it.
I totally agree on that point. I think like in terms of just with oppression, systematic hate, and systematic microaggression, is that it evolves in every category, whether we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about gender, whether we're talking about sex, race, and therefore, as you mentioned, everyone is affected, everyone has biases. It's really learning and recognizing those biases, learning how to, basically remove it from your mental, and actively fighting for being an ally of, really any movement that is for just being equal and having equality. And and speaking of like intersectionality, I think like I realized that myself when, just like in high school growing up, because I was born in Mozambique, which is in Africa. I moved to New York City when I was 7, into like a Dominican neighborhood. So growing up, I wasn't ever like in a black community and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And therefore, I realized when I saw the struggle of black women in terms of, you know, I am beautiful, we are beautiful, the colorism involved. I had to take a step back and recognize my own biases in terms of just that was systematically placed in me. It's like, wait a minute, do I find black women beautiful? And after just thinking about that, of course I do. And it was just asking myself that question that was a
Mm-hmm.
step that I needed to step into the right direction. And same thing with all these other movements. So I think that's very important. But anytime that you fight for something, or you stand for something, you protest, there are those that get very upset and very mad, and claim that because you question this belief that's accepted by society, you're against the society as a whole, and that makes you a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
So just a segue into the shits of why I hit you up, because I saw on social media. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I forget her name. I honestly never heard of her. Jen.
Really, I'm surprised you haven't. Clearly,
Yeah,
everyone has at this
yeah.
point. The amount of
Apparently
attention
everyone
that he's
has. I've been under a rock. Justine, I think it is her name,
gotten.
and she is just known for disrupting open dialogue and
Mm-hmm.
disrupting protest in an unhealthy way. Like she
Mm-hmm.
brings unhealthiness to peaceful protests and discourse, even with the organization she's involved in, which are the
Mm-hmm.
Q's Republicans, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I just wanted to gain some more insight on that, because these current times are times of basically we're not taking any bullshit. We're not accepting it. We're not gonna be cordial. We're gonna talk about the issue, and you're either with it or
Mm-hmm.
not. So that's really why I wanted to invite you onto the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
because of the things you do, and I know you're outspoken, and I know you're frustrated. So I just wanted to have some open dialogue around that. So
Yeah,
yeah, so what's
I'd
the
be
issue
glad
then?
to talk about that. I have so much time. I have so much time. As I've said in my caption, I
Yeah.
think for people who don't know, I posted on my Instagram yesterday um, a post specific to Justine Brooke Murray. She's I believe she's a senior this year at Syracuse, but she is a student there. That's part of Young Americans for Freedom. I believe she's the president of that organization, as well as Hughes Republicans. Additionally, she's known as like the campus Tommy Lauren or whatever. Um, the issue with Justine that I have is not even really her political views. Forget that. I don't care. I'm not interested in engaging with people with right wing racist, views.
Right.
That's fine. If you have them, keep that with you and your peoples. That's fine. You can have those views, view whatever you want.
Right.
My issue with her is that her behavior and her actions are just abysmal and really harmful, honestly. And I will give specific examples. The first time I came into contact with Justine was during the Theta Tau protest. So sophomore, she was a freshman, new, whatever. She came to the protest and started antagonizing one of the Black female students who were speaking about her experiences.
Mm.
And it was like an open dialogue for people to really just like express those things. And like we made it so that people were not filming or recording, because this was like supposed to be an intimate space where we're all supposed to actually like get stuff out
Right.
and also come up with tangible solutions for how to move forward. as a student body outside of the administration, right? Because like us holding each other accountable and us having an understanding of each other's experiences. So we weren't supposed to be recording. Like we asked people not to record, whatever. She was really emotional in her, anecdotes about her experiences on campus, as she should be. Like we're all dealing with like a lot of personalized, like a lot of trauma, coming into college, dealing with things within college, and a lot of these, some people have gone through some crazy stuff. And so after she was done giving her anecdote, Justine was like, well, do you really think like that's because of the admin? And like she had her iPad out and was like recording her. And this, you can ask your questions, that's fine and dandy, but like you coming in someone's face with an iPad, questioning them, refusing to give your identity so people know where your recordings are going, so you have the right to know that type of thing, right? And you're just like recording people and being invasive on purpose. It's just not cool because it's like you're just doing it to disrupt things. You're not doing it to actually engage with students or like actually try to understand experiences or build connections with other students. And it's like, I know it becomes frustrating because it's like, I know people with her views or whatever that I have been close to, not close to anymore because I'm at a point where I'm like, all right, but like have been close to in the past that would never really go into a space like that with the intention to disrupt and like make people feel uncomfortable, but instead with the intention to understand and like also share their own experiences and viewpoints in a healthy way, right? And I feel like she just purposely inserts herself, knowing she makes people uncomfortable, filming them. And then what she does is she changes the narrative on her, her recordings. Yeah. And like will post different narratives on her little website called Campus Reform or whatever, which is like, that's just a whole nother topic. So another thing that she did, which is so crazy that like, it's so like mind-boggling to me that like she does things like this, but like she used to intentionally go on the multicultural learning community. Since when there was only one, now there's multiple because NotagainSU, love to see it. But when we only had one multicultural learning community, and go on the floor and like tell students that we should build the wall, that she used to go on the floor dressing up as Melania Trump, like on Halloween, like just stupid shit that not to do. Like read the room, sis. Like what is your purpose? Like, why would you go up to a group of people of color and just yell at them, build the wall, dress in Melania Trump, like attire, do all of that stuff when it's gonna end? Like, you're doing it on purpose. You're not there to like spark an actual dialogue and like, have conversations. You're just really harassing people for no reason. Because it's like, these are where people live. It's not like you're walking on campus, with a Melania Trump outfit on, with your Make America Great Again hat or whatever. Who cares? I don't care what you do, how you wear, what you do when you go to class, whatever. But you're going into people's personal spaces where they live, and you're intentionally bothering people and recording them on their own floor. Why? Like, what's the point? What is the purpose? Like, you're just harassing people. And it's just like, I don't understand the logic.
I feel like just doing that, she's like, if she's recording and she's antagonizing people of color, I feel like she's just trying to be a victim. I think that's like, she's trying to be a victim. Yeah. She's trying to get hands put on her so she could, make herself, a bigger public figure in the right-wing movement, especially with the narrative. Like, she's already prepared to have a narrative in place in case she gets attacked. I was just there, minding my business.
With my Melania Trump outfit.
Right. Trying to have an open discourse, and I just got attacked. And that will make her better. And she seems to have really no fear because she knows, like, as a white woman, the power that she has. The power that just has just in terms of being around people of color. Like, no one's going to touch me at all. So.
And the one time that, shit really got hot, when people were really ready to buck with her and we had to stop it from happening, was like what I referenced in the second post. Like, that was what that text was about. Because she intentionally, like, there was this this was like after all this hate crime happened, Barnes Center protests. She comes in antagonizing people. At this point, everyone knows Justine. So when you see her, you spot her, you're just like, all right, you gotta go, because you've created a persona of yourself that people don't want to engage with and deal with you anymore. So now people are going to make assumptions and be like, look, you're not welcome here. Like, you make people uncomfortable, you have to leave. So there was a huge group of students. I feel like every Black student that goes to Syracuse, which is not a lot, were at this protest at this time that she was there. And here she comes with her camera, recording people, being invasive or whatever. People that knew her, not didn't know her closely, but knew of her, started to approach her and like asked her to leave or whatever. And you know what? People had enough of her shit, because it's like, we've been dealing with her forever. So some people, got a little spicy with the words, was like, yo, you gotta go, or whatever. Yeah. So then she recorded the video and created this article, and the title was like, Syracuse, like a campus correspondent mobbed by left-wing students. And I was just like, this video has zero context, none. And the worst part about it is that it made its way to like right-wing forums. So like, it was on 4chan, it was on like right-wing YouTube, a bunch of other places. And I'm like, I'm not going to say she personally posted them, because I don't know, but the people that engage with her material are the same people that are on those forums and message boards and stuff. So then we got a lot of like, when you're reading these forums, you're like, oh, we should lynch them, we should kill them, oh, a bunch of niggers, da 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 da. And it's like, she's inciting things to where we could be personally endangered. Which pushed me to a point where it was like, all right, you know what? I'm going to address this with somebody I know that's in the organization that has a very high position. Some might say the highest, but I'm not going to say your name, whatever. And I hit them up and I was just like, yo, like, y'all need to like separate yourself, because y'all say a lot of stuff behind closed doors.
You're talking
but
about
aren't ever ready to denounce it. Huh?
You're talking about Cuse Republicans.
Yes. Okay. So I'm like, so y'all say a lot of hot shit behind closed doors. Everyone knows y'all's beef. Everybody knows Cuse Republicans beef. Whatever. So it's just like, y'all have a lot to say under your breath, but don't ever address her when it comes time, right? And at this point, you have someone representing your organization that has a video of us circulating on 4chan, and we're starting to get threats from people that we don't know what they can do, right? And like, we don't know if our identities have been put out or whatever. Because, the internet, it's very easy to find out who somebody is. So it's at a point where like, you need to put your morality in front of any controversy or whatever that you might get, or backlash you might get from removing her as a member, or at least publicly being like, yo, like, we didn't think that was cool, but we're not removing her, whatever. You don't have to I'm not even asking y'all to renounce her membership. Yeah. But I think people are really tired, because Cuse Republicans loves to be upset and whine or whatever when people are like, it's a bunch of white nationalists in your organization, but y'all don't be calling out the white nationalists in your organization. That's why people think, well, but all y'all must be white nationalists, because y'all don't be saying nothing about the white nationalists in your organization. Yeah. When you don't separate yourselves from them. So I don't understand like why y'all think y'all will get surprised, like, oh, how could they think we're white supremacists? How could they think we're racist? It's because y'all have never openly condemned people in your own organization that do things like this, that have put student lives at risk, that have harassed students of color on purpose. And you said it in the text. You know the problem, yet we're still teetering and pussyfooting around the issue because y'all are so protective of free speech. And I'm like, how can y'all, like, free speech and hate speech are different things. And I don't understand like why y'all continue to protect her. And now I'm like, I think I do understand, because maybe y'all agree with her. There's no way you have to agree with her at this point, because it's been almost a year since that conversation. Wow. So it's like, come on now.
I mean, she's probably their star player. She gets traction for what she does. Mm-hmm. Like, I checked her out. she has like a community that interacts with her, and as you said,
Mhm.
like her articles or posts do get
Mhm.
attention from right wing movements, and there's a sense of power that that gives not only her
Mhm.
but her organization. So if we're just
Mhm.
like keeping it real, even if they dislike being associated with white nationalists or white supremacists, they're not gonna, give up that power in terms of
Mhm.
allowing her to leave and kicking her out because
What power do y'all have though on campus? Like, I feel like campus Republicans has become so much more of a not respectable organization since her entering the sphere since 2016. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. The difference between freshman year and senior year college Republicans is staunch. It's like people can't even have conversations anymore with the organization, the people
Mhm.
they invite to campus, sus. Like, things have just been a little, like, y'all need to go ahead and break off into two organizations because this isn't the same organization that like I remember. And like that, mind you, like I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, I'm a socialist. So like I don't care what either of your organizations do. I don't prescribe by either ideologies of like Democrat, Republican, whatever. So like I'm of the vein of like, y'all can believe what y'all want. Y'all both problematic in my eyes. I don't really care what y'all do. Y'all keep it over there. But for me, it's like if you we're at this point where it's like, especially the time and place we're in right now, you can't get away with just letting one or two people fly under the radar, being like openly ridiculous, and people not saying nothing about y'all and attaching it to your organization. Maybe like it would have been different, pre 2016, but at this point, things are just so blatantly obvious that y'all just aren't doing anything or saying anything. And we're at a point where it's like people have to speak up. Like you have to call it out at this point. And I don't really care if it's going to be called, oh my God, people in my inbox, you're publicly shaming her. You're being racist. How could, like, girl, I don't care. Boo hoo. Like, okay, public shaming of being, like, you should have never said cultural genocide, making fun of Native American genocide. Like, if you were going to post something like that and you didn't think nobody screenshotted it and saved it for a time like this, I don't know what you thought. You're like, why would you post something like that and you didn't think we're gonna get consequences for it? Like, it's just kind of like you got to stick by what you post. Same thing with Cuse Republicans have to stick by what they let fly and who they let represent their organization. So if y'all gonna let Justine Myree represent your organization, then people are gonna think y'all are white supremacists who have very poor grammar and writing skills. I mean, I just like I don't know. Like I'm just over it. I'm over her. I'm over for me, it was personally like a student accountability thing. I have no expectation of the school doing anything. She's been reported multiple times by multiple people for things that she's done personally to people, by things that she's done to people in their own dorms, by her harassing student protesters, by just her being a nuisance. Professors have said stuff about her. And it's like, there's a reason why people don't like you, sis. It's not simply because you like Trump. It's not as simple as, oh, you're the campus Republican. Because there are plenty of, why are we pretending like Syracuse don't got all kinds of Republicans, conservatives running all up and down? We got all kinds of people on campus with different political views. We have a very wide political landscape, from communists to white supremacists. That's the playing field we have. So nobody's upset with you for being Republican. The problem is that you're absolutely invasive and you never engage. She doesn't even engage in dialogue. That's the gag. It's like at the end of the day, she just harasses people and then she won't speak back. She never engages. Nobody knows what she thinks. Who actually knows what Justine thinks? I can't even critique her, political ideology, because what does she even believe? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Because she doesn't engage with anybody. So it's just like you exist to harass people, and that's the problem. Like, I would love to engage with her. I've asked multiple times my sophomore year. Now, the door's open, sis. If you unblock me, like if you would like to talk, we can still chat, sis.
Has
but
she
like,
ever
come
responded?
on. she's not gonna respond. And if she does, it's like, okay, let's talk. Like, you wanna have a conversation, a serious conversation around a lot of the stuff you post about. Let's have that conversation. It's not like people don't try to actually like challenge her on her views. And that's her problem. And that's also her little friend's issue, is that when people are like, oh, like the left on a campus doesn't like to engage with arguments and views. It's like, no, you never open up. You ever open up engagement, like, at all. You don't even debate your own views. You ignore everybody's comments. When people message you personally, you ignore their responses. People provide constant, like, resources, sources. Like, they don't even know how to cite sources in their damn articles. So I don't expect, like, any real academic engagement. But it's just like, y'all make conservatives look bad by not citing your sources, by not engaging with people. And then you frame it as if, like, oh, this campus cancel culture, left wing, whatever. But it's like, y'all don't even engage in discourse.
Right. Yeah, it's stupid. It's dumb. Well, thank you for that insight. Like, from what I learned, because I didn't hear much about her before, like, 2 weeks ago, but I quickly caught up and heard most of what you said. I want to jump back to the ending of the NotagainSU protest. Was it because obviously you graduated and everything, so at least that issue, the suspension issue, got resolved. So what ended it? Was it quarantine foremost, or
COVID ended NotagainSU? COVID's the best thing to have ever happened to Syracuse University. It didn't. When I tell you the amount of change that probably could have happened, astronomical. But I mean, I would say, like, yeah, COVID-19 ruined everything, of course. I mean, it ruined everything for most people,
right?
In general. But like with the protests, yeah, it did end because of COVID. Obviously, we didn't want to continue the occupation because it wasn't healthy at that point to continue an occupation of like 30 people in the same space, sleeping over. That just would have been, it was already unsanitary to begin with. No one should be sleeping in an administration building at all. But if you're going to do it, you shouldn't be doing it in a pandemic. So it definitely had to end. The school used it to their advantage. They really rushed out what it was they were going to do by not making it clear what it was they were going to do. We had like a virtual meeting with them over the phone where they refused to sign anything that they already committed to during negotiations. Because we did it was 4 days of negotiation with them in person. So like over 8 hours of us negotiating our demands, where we made compromises with a lot of things. We got some of the stuff we wanted. Obviously didn't get a lot of the stuff we wanted, whatever, but we were willing to like stick to those things, right? And of course, none of that got agreed to in the end because of COVID, because they were like, oh, COVID, sorry, we have all this. They were like, oh, because of COVID-19, blah, 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 we can't meet, blah, 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 blah. We're not signing this and that. But so horrible, but like, it's so interesting now because of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now they want to acknowledge the stuff they agreed to, but they don't want to give us credit. So like that email that they sent with the whole, we're donating, like we're investing $10 million into these scholarships. We're gonna release the standing operator procedures of DPS, which they refused to do, by the way. Absolutely refused to do. Said they were never gonna do it, that we need to stop asking, that if we wanted to get access to them, we needed to take legal action against them. That's what they told us. But then when the whole George Floyd thing happened, oh yes, like we're taking the initiative to release our standard operating procedures. And it's like, we've been asked for this. Yeah. Don't try to pass this off as something you came up with. And of course, the school does this thing where like, they recognize every other student group but Black students on campus. So like, if you go on their website with demands, it says Jewish student demands, it says international student demands, it says Indigenous student demands, and then it says student protesters, as if all of us weren't protesting. Wow. So it's either call us NotagainSU or say Black students, because they're the demands specific to the Black community or came up by the Black community. So of course we didn't get credit for any of that stuff that they put in their email, which was infuriating. As well as them trying to pass it off as like, look at all these great things that we're doing despite George Floyd's murder, how great we treat our Black students. And I mean, I love the PR backlash from students, from alumni, from faculty, commenting and roasting the crap out of Syracuse in their like Instagram, on Instagram and on Twitter, dragging them for filth, being like, yo, we didn't forget, like, y'all 3 months ago, y'all were out here denying students food, like not allow, like suspending people, threatening arrest, like for this very issue, quite literally for this very specific issue of Black humanity on campus. So I mean, hopefully like things improve. Like there's a petition I made going around right now. It has 8,000 signatures now, which is really cool. I didn't think it would have that many. So right now the goal is 10,000. And then once we hit 10,000, we're gonna draft a letter to the administration attached with the petition. But it's basically for the school to admit their complicity in anti-Black racism. And honestly, it's not some new thing to do.
Right.
Everyone thinking that like, oh my God, it would be groundbreaking if Syracuse admitted to being racist. It's like, no, like, you know, Georgetown has admitted that. Like so many schools in Virginia have been like, yo, like we were founded on slavery. Like here's some things we're doing to like fix that. Like we've been complicit in white supremacy. Like y'all would not be the first to do that. Pretends like, oh my God, like it'd be this big deal. It's been done so many times. Yeah. It's actually protocol at this point for you to like recognize your complicity in these systems. Like Yale has done it. Yale's also being canceled right now, but like Yale has done it to an extent, right? So it's just like, y'all can throw as much money as you want into these diversity initiatives, but it would absolutely mean nothing if, you know, you don't recognize your own BS.
Right.
Because it's like we can't move forward as a like I don't know how they expect to move forward because like I may be a senior, y'all do freshmen this year, so y'all gotta deal with them for the next 3 years. And I don't see how you guys can reconcile that without recognizing what y'all did and also correcting the record, because it's like they admitted to doing it on video, but I mean they won't correct the record when they told everyone they were feeding us. That's what they told everybody, that they didn't threaten to arrest us, all that stuff. So like they won't correct the record publicly. So it's like all these backroom apologies aren't gonna work when you ruined people's reputations publicly.
Yeah, so. That's crazy. I had no idea that. I knew Syracuse was racist, but until the NotagainSU movement, I did not know that they were just terrible. And it's crazy that they're trying to act as though, I feel like a lot of institutions are doing that with the movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, because it's worldwide. They're trying to act like, oh, this is our contribution, we recognize, but obviously it shouldn't have took this for them to act on it. And you know, I'm glad that at least, you know, did they suspend any students or were all suspensions recanted?
Like, oh, are our suspensions gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, they got expunged after 3 weeks. They got officially expunged. Within like the first 3 days, they were like, we lifted your suspensions, but it was still not clear if they would be on our transcripts or not. So they got expunged after the negotiation. So yeah, like third week, they were officially expunged from our records. Yeah. Okay. It's like, I mean, that's great, but yeah, like the thing is this, like I was willing to risk suspension. That's fine. At the end of the day, for me personally, apology. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me anymore because it's like we were fighting for it. If y'all meant it, y'all would have been apologized, you know? Yeah. I think for me, it's just like correcting the record is important to me because I don't want the freshmen that were involved to be seen as liars for the rest of their college career. Student body generally accepts, you know, what happened, but some faculty, because apparently the deans were also involved in the decision-making to not give us food and medicine and stuff. So a lot of the faculty members, white faculty, don't believe what happened. And so, yeah, so there's a lot of tension between, because they just can't believe a school would do that. It's like, I wouldn't believe it either, correct? I would have to see it. Like, I'm not shocked. Like, I'm not surprised why people don't believe it because I was very surprised when it happened. I couldn't believe it. I was experiencing it. I was just in constant shock. So like I get like why people are like sus, like, but it's like, if you go to our page, it's there. All the information about it happening is there. There's proof of it happening. Like, that's what happened. It is what it is. And like, the school needs to admit to it, because it's like, no one can trust y'all. Like, I don't even know like how trust can be built at. Yeah, and it's like this frustration between, and it's just like what we were talking about earlier, right? When we were talking about like, people advocating for the end of racism being un-American. It's like the school painted us as anti-Syracuse because we're asking for the school to be better. And it's like, I would not have wasted 40 days of my life sleeping in the school buildings this year, of my senior year, mind you, sleeping in school buildings, if I didn't give a crap about the school. Because if I just didn't like y'all, I would have just minded my business and kept it pushing and like, stole all your money and like that. But like, no, like I care. Like I'm a student leader on campus. Like I love my department. Like, and I know it can do better. So that's why I did it, because I loved past tense in school. Now as an alum, I'm looking at y'all a little sideways. Y'all made us hate the school. Y'all made us feel anti-Syracuse because y'all are anti-Black. And it's like, how can any Black person at this point be like, I bleed orange? Yeah. Why would you even move your mouth to say that? Because the school denied food to Black students. And for what? Because they were peacefully protesting? Not like people were breaking out windows and burning the freaking building down. People were sitting on the floor like, meet our demands, read our paper. Please take time to read the things we wrote and curated for months. Like, please commit to what you already said you're going to commit to. Oh, yeah, no food, no medicine, no religious council, no lawyers. Oh, okay. Like, what? Like, what kind of sane reaction is that? And it's like, white supremacy doesn't make sense. So that's why the reaction didn't make sense. Yeah. So,
and as you mentioned, like, the progress, or it was escalating. I feel like if quarantine of COVID-19 didn't happen, there would have been some sort of resolution or some sort of change. Because I think that even though they had a lot of pressure on you guys, the pressure was there because they knew that they had to do something, they had to comply in some way, shape, or form. And it's great that they're, acting now because it's trending and it's a viral thing. But I'm not so like certain that Syracuse changed. I think they're just doing their part to support in terms of, or making it seem like they're not part of the issue.
Are they actually doing it? That's the question, because it's like they said they were doing the initial demands and they didn't do them. So it's like, what are they doing? Like, no one knows what they're actually going to do. Yeah. So it's just like, you can't even trust them when they're being fake.
Yeah.
Affirmatively, it's like, are you really going to get put $10 million in these scholarships? Are y'all going to have Black students to give them to? Are Black people even coming to Syracuse anymore? Like, the amount of Black students that have transferred out, like the freshmen, is insane. I don't think I've ever seen that many people like leave at once. And I don't think a lot of people are going to come this year because they know what's up. And it's like, I don't blame them. Like, at this point, it's like, I don't want Black students to come to Syracuse because I think that they're not supported there.
Where are we? And
I feel like they got to get it together before I would be like, spend $78,000 a year at this school that doesn't even like recognize your humanity. Like, why would I tell you to do that,
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad that, we feel unsafe in these communities, and therefore we have to move to these just more accepting colleges, or even just Black colleges, and just give in to, self-segregation due to safety of community and just feeling like you belong. And that sucks. But, we've been talking for like an hour plus now. Don't want to take up too much of your time. As I mentioned, before we started recording, I have this story going along with my guests, and I'll tell you like the last two or three lines. So you won't know the whole story, and I think that just adds to the fun. And also, like, eventually, I'm not gonna recite a whole book. So, the story so far, or the last three lines are, um, they went out. I'll tell you the characters' names. There's a homeless man named Rick, and a man who hasn't been named yet, and then there's two other characters which will be introduced to. So, a homeless man named Rick and a man, they go out for a walk. A vortex into the unknown opens up before them. They see two figures who then invite them for a drink, and the figures reveal themselves, and one is Cardi B and the other one is Bill Cosby.
Ooh.
Yes.
I don't like that.
I didn't like that either when I heard it.
Okay.
But you could decide then what happens now. They could, I don't know, stab Bill Cosby and go party with Cardi B. It's up to you what happens. So you're part of the story.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. How much did I get to add?
You have a sentence, so
A sentence.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Cardi B says, "Think fast," and she opens up a separate vortex, and Bill Cosby is sucked in, and it closes.
You just had to get Bill out of there. You was like, no.
He's not allowed to be here any longer. Absolutely not. I'm glad that I was a guest for this part, because whoever's idea it was to bring Bill Cosby we need to have a conversation. Oh my God.
That's
He's
hilarious.
not now. Thank God.
All right. Thank you for kicking him out and for your contribution in the story.
Of course.
This was a dope conversation. I was laughing a lot. I learned a lot, especially about the NotagainSU movement and Justine's foolery. And it was very informal. And thank you for just being a leader for the minority community, and willing to risk being suspended, and just knowing that it's more than just individual. It's more about progression and things like that.
Yeah, of course. Thanks again for having me. If you want to follow me, my IG is at TayM98. Same thing with my Twitter. My Twitter is 10 times crazier than my Instagram. So if you want my real thoughts, go to my Twitter. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you again for having me.
Yeah, and I'll hit you up later just to have like all your information in terms of anything you want to promote. It'll be in the description below. You'll know where to find Tayla and all her movements, as well as your petition.
Yes, and my petition. Yes, that's necessary. Please sign the petition. It's so necessary. Get us to 10,000 so we can send this letter in, please.
All right.